Very excited to be speaking to all of you today about the exciting world of radiance fields. There's been so much excitement over the last, I would say, really 5 years now about this technology, and we're going to start to take a look as to why and where it's being used currently. And so let me just Okay, so as we can see here, radiance fields are able to reconstruct this really, really lifelike perspective and reconstruction of a 3D space and time. And it's really just been incredible to watch the rise of this technology come up. So this specific capture was taken of a apartment from one of my friends named Ray Turner, and you can just see the lifelikeness in terms of as you move throughout the scene, you really get a sense as if you're there and light appears the way that it does in real life. So now let's take a look at NeRFs. So neural radiance fields are kind of the thing that started this all in terms of this more modern radiance field boom. And we're approaching actually roughly the 5-year mark now where they were doing the work in early January back in 2020. And basically with NeRFs, they are shooting a ray out into the infinite future, and they're taking samples along each different points of the ray, which is basically bringing out RGB plus density. And we can see here on the right too, this is one of my favorite visuals, is it looks like a normal photograph, looks like just like a normal triceratops skull, but you can see this ball is actually proving that this is in fact a complete 3D model where you can actually really go explore and see around everything. And one other note that I like to just include a fun quote every so often is I think a couple of years ago there was a quote from Mark Zuckerberg that he did in one of his talks where he was referencing NeRFs about just saying that the level of detail that you're able to get is just impressive, that you can get these fine elements with each individual strand of hair, and you can see these semi-transparent features of it where it really does feel as if you're actually in the space, and so it's always cool to see more support. The next paper that I really wanted just to quickly highlight in terms of the progression of going from NeRFs to where we are right now is NeRFs, when they first came out, were very, very slow to train. This is something that you would kind of start the process and it would take 24 plus hours to get back in reconstruction. And that really changed in 2022 with NVIDIA's instant neural graphics, otherwise known as instant NGP or instant NeRF. And that radically dropped the training time down from over a day to really just a handful of minutes. And that just also unlocked, I would say, like the research floodgates for consumers and larger bases of researchers to begin doing work within this field. And so, Thomas was recognized for his work at, let's see if I can get the audio. So I saw that note. But yeah, so Thomas won Best Paper Award at SIGGRAPH 2022, but the rise of radiance fields just was generally starting from there. So if we take a look at a next paper, what I'd like to highlight is, of course, 3D Gaussian splatting. And the words radiance fields are often synonymous with the words neural radiance field, NeRFs, but as it turns out, 3D Gaussian splatting is another way to render a radiance field. So, the full title of Gaussian splatting is 3D Gaussian splatting for real-time radiance field rendering. And it came out in late April 2023 from INRIA and GraphDeco from Bernard Kerbel and George Gopanis, and followed another similar trend of winning Best Paper at SIGGRAPH 2023. And again, we saw better and stronger advancements where, we would start to see really interactive frame rates where we'd be pushing well into the hundreds, going up to several hundred from there. And there's also just been a tremendous amount of research interest that's continued, where it was the 19th most cited paper of 2023, which was just 2 slots behind Google's Gemini. So really the impact that Gaussian splatting had really started to take off for the world of radiance field representations. And some future directions as well. There's also been a lot of papers that have pushed radiance fields into the world of ray tracing. So here's another paper from NVIDIA called 3D Gaussian ray tracing, where it started just to continue to accelerate for more novel representations of radiance fields and different effects. So you get full ray tracing suite in this one. And I think it's overwhelmingly likely that we will continue to see novel radiance field representations. But the ones that we have so far are not the only ones. And we can take a look here, the kind of expanding upon that point. NeRFs and Gaussians, for instance, are not the only 2 ways to render a radiance field. There's quite a lot of different methodologies to do this, and there's really I'd say an unknown ceiling as of right now as to what will be the de facto representation in the future, or if it will be a completely novel representation that we have yet to see. But for me, I take a look at this and see radiance fields as a way to really start to impact anyone who currently uses 2D in some medium, whether that's being used in photography or in videos. This is a way to really start to supercharge some of the okay. So I'll try and limit some of the videos for the audio sake. Okay, so I'm just going to pause this for just a second. So as we take a look as to why this is, why are radiance fields actually capable of putting forth such a level of disruption? And one of the answers to this is that it's very easy. It's a very low barrier to entry, where you can capture a radiance field with anything that can create a still image. This is not something that you need to have a proprietary system for. This is not something that you have to have an expensive camera system for. Anything that is capable of creating a still image is capable of creating or reconstructing a radiance field. So and also your phones and mobile devices are really great systems because it has such a naturally deep depth of field, and you really just need to get like sharp images to reconstruct one successfully. Uh, they're also quite efficient to process, where you can train them on a single consumer grade GPU, and we're finding that this is just continuing to fall rapidly, and we're not anywhere close to the ceiling of this optimizations too, where there are platforms like Niantic Scaniverse where you can already train locally on your mobile device on iOS or Android, whereby you are not uploading anything. You could train on airplane mode and it will reconstruct for Gaussian splatting within under 2 minutes on your phone. And another really great part of radiance fields is that you're able to revisit existing data because you're only using 2D images as your base input. If you have a large volume of photogrammetry data, it's not as difficult as you would imagine. It's actually quite simple to just to go and plug in your existing data, and you can get a completely revised and hopefully lifelike representation of the work that you've already done. And what's also quite interesting is that compared to photogrammetry, you need less overlap between these images, meaning you should be able to reduce the number of total images in your data set, but still get a lifelike approximation. But one important thing to note is that radiance fields do not natively produce polygons. There are no triangles involved in the creation of radiance fields, which is also a very interesting direction. As we take a look at some of the other advantages of Gaussian splatting, which is a form of radiance field, it really looks like that's going to be the first bridge to the industry adoption of these radiance fields for the following reasons. One, it renders in well excess of real time, so pushing above 120, 100, 200 frames a second. You can capture it, like I said, with any camera. It's lightweight and computationally inexpensive, and it's also fast to train, and it's continuing to get faster and faster. And I'm just going to move through these slides a little bit faster. So as we take a look at some of whether these are going to actually impact the world's industries, I really do believe that we're going to see large-scale disruption across all of the world's largest industries that stand to gain significant data improvements from hyperreal 3D. And some of these places are already using it. So if we take a look, and I'll expand upon these in just a little bit, but from autonomous vehicles and driving to AC and GIS, telecom, navigation, wayfinding, robotics, real estate, extended reality, as well as news and journalism. It's really started to translate between the world of research and into now the industry adoption of hyperreal 3D through using radiance fields. So I'll take a look at AC, for instance, as one of the world's largest industries. And basically, the amount of information that you're able to pull out on an actual existing construction site is just generally staggering, where you're really able to translate what's going on at a construction site at any given moment in time from something as simple as just a generalized drone video. And this can really start to connect stakeholders as well as make sure that things are moving correctly. And as we move more into a AI future, as these systems begin to get paired with larger traditional AI systems, this is going to become extremely powerful. And as we take a look as a somewhat adjacent industry with GIS, there's really quite a lot of exciting momentum here, where we're starting to see companies like Esri and Cesium/Bentley, Hexagon, and more starting to really create systems to use and interact with these radiance fields through 3D Gaussian splatting. And as we took a look before, we're seeing just so much more of an enhanced detail preservation compared to photogrammetry, where perhaps in the future we might, where in the past, where some of these places like reflective surfaces or highly specular objects may have failed within photogrammetry. We're receiving such a higher recovery rate of data. And another thing that's also quite interesting to take a look at with radiance fields is that there's a misconception that radiance fields are unable to recover measurements, but this is actually not true. And we're able to get measurement information out of radiance fields. And we can apply very, very broad applications to this. And so anything from monitoring the actual environment to really, assessing a disaster, where if there's a natural disaster, we're able to very quickly fly a drone over and start to reconstruct the world in hyperreal 3D and make more informed decisions in a much faster capacity, where time is really equal to hopefully saving lives. And as well as also just anywhere that you need a digital twin of a system is really becoming quite improved. And in addition to the companies that I named just there, there's also quite a lot of other companies who are building behind the scenes right now and experimenting with the technology that I think we'll see before the end of this year. Some really big players in their respective industries starting to embrace this technology. So as we could take a look too as how it affects the industrial metaverse. And this is an example here from the Finnish VR company, Varjo. And what they're allowing with their teleport platform is you're able to create an asynchronous work environment with these lifelike captures where you're able to send data and information to people who may not be geographically located to one another, but you're getting such an output that looks as if you're already there. And being able to introduce both annotations spatially as well as take and leave measurements in either the 2D display or in VR is going to transform the way that we interact with work in a real world capacity, whereas this is not something that is really far off in the future. In fact, this is something that's able to really start being done today. And we also are starting to see other platforms like Play Canvas's Super Splat 2, which is going to be able to create some of these annotations and other functionalities to really empower industrial or just general asynchronous work in a lifelike capacity in the somewhat near future. And here's one that I'm really excited about is how Radiance fields are helping autonomous driving, and they are creating a really a more so cost-effective and scalable way for autonomous vehicles, and it's seeing a lot of rapid growth right now. And so this example I have here on the right is from Wave's Ghost Gym, which is a neural rendering simulator. And Wave actually has two different ways to do this right now. They have Ghost Gym and Prism 1. Prism 1 extends the capabilities of Ghost Gym, whereby they're able to bring dynamic content, and they actually are using dynamic Gaussians to go and actually simulate these long tail scenarios. So what they say basically is that if the best way to train self-driving cars would be to put them onto the road, but the amount of volume that would be necessary for that is just not feasible for the real world. And so the closer approximation you can get to the real world in a digital and simulation-based environment is hugely important. And Wave has been able to make incredible strides with this. But there's also been really great progress in the world of physical AI, as well as with these new world foundation models. So most recently at CES, just a couple of weeks ago, NVIDIA released Cosmos, which is a world foundation model specifically tuned for physical AI. And so I believe that now we're going to start to see more and more autonomous driving companies begin to benefit from the outputs of these foundation models, which are going to be rendered and interacted with and simulated using Radiance fields. Here's one that not a lot of people realize, and that's actually that Google has been using Radiance fields for the last few years now. It's live in Google Maps. This is actually, I just pulled this from my iPhone yesterday from a restaurant here in Manhattan, where Radiance fields are being able to allow users to discover new places and really understand them, what's contained inside of them, and then navigate to them. And you're able to get these destinations with this lifelike fidelity. So This specific feature is only live in the interior for immersive view. Currently, from what I understand, the exterior immersive views of within Google Maps are still powered by photogrammetry, but it appears that when you go to the preview, it looks like they're still rendering a type of NERF. And when you go into the actual detail page, like you can see here, you can see the Gaussians that are very prominent. From what I understand, this is now not vanilla Gaussian splatting, but this is actually RadSplat, which is an internal method to Google, which kind of trains a Gaussian splatting model on top of a NERF, and you get some really compelling frame rates pushing up to 700 to 900 frames a second. We haven't yet seen Apple Maps do anything with this, but I would be surprised if we don't see something this year from the Apple team. As it turns out as well, we can also see dynamic content as well is really such a active area of research here. And the fidelity that you're already able to achieve is just generally incredible, whereby the way that we actually communicate with one another too is really going to be supercharged by these Radiance field implementations, where we can connect with people and actually have conversations in both a 2D capacity as well as in VR that feels as if we're still in the room with one another. And this is such an active area of research that I'm hopeful we will see it really start to shift over into consumer applications in the somewhat short term. And along the lines of exciting projects is we also can see the world of generative AI. And as it turns out, Radiance fields can also be generated. And with the way that it's coming out right now is that Radiance fields are ending up as the interactive output of these generative models. And so you have companies like World Labs and Odyssey and Spell, which is a new model from Spline, where you're able to create these very easy either objects or items into hyperreal and interactive 3D. And because they're already rendering in these real-time rates, it's making it very easy to interact with, and you're still getting lifelike output out of this. And so this is another area that I expect to skyrocket in terms of research capabilities. It was still just about a year ago where we saw the initial preview of Sora, and the actual amount of progress that has been made since then is generally shocking. And I think that we will see this continue throughout this year and in the future years to come. And if we take a look at how some of the other companies that have been using forms of Radiance fields, there have been some of the leading brands in both the US and the world that have been implementing and experimenting with this technology. One of the reasons why this is that it's really compatible with a wide variety of software platforms, so ranging from Reality Capture to Unreal to Unity, Blender, Houdini, After Effects, Foundry's Nuke, DaVinci Resolve, Adobe Substance 3D, Cinema 4D, Agisoft Metashape, Autodesk Maya, Otoy's Octane Render, as well as Chaos V-Ray. All of these have been already providing support to Gaussian splatting. And the amount of companies that I know are currently working on functionality is significantly larger than that's contained on this list. And I do expect that we will see more. This slide will continue to grow in size over the course of this year. One of my favorite examples is how the Weather Channel has been using Radiance fields thus far, and they're using it to translate news stories to the public and to really show understanding as to what something means. And so with the case of Radiance fields, they have a system called flood effects, whereby they simulate flood conditions, and they're able to really provide tangible warnings to people to illustrate what the importance of either evacuating or taking natural disasters seriously. And so they've been able to use this. It's basically right now, they are using a combination of methods of Radiance fields. Most recently, they've been using PostShot combined with Unreal Engine to get these visualizations, which have just been amazing to see. And the response to it has been strangely overwhelming positive on the internet. It's something I think has translated really nicely to the general public. And they actually most recently just won an Emmy for Outstanding Technical Excellence, which is the first time that a Radiance field has been recognized by the Emmys. Another very cool example has been the Phoenix Suns. They have taken these are all NERFs that were captured using Luma AI, and they created reconstructions of the entire roster. And basically, each one of these captures was captured in a fraction of a second, whereby they had a camera rig composed of several GoPros. And from there, all these camera motions were set in post. None of this work had to be done up front, whereby the actual time on set was radically reduced, and everything thereafter was able to be figured out and planned after they had all of their materials. And similarly, they were also recognized with 2 Emmys for technical achievement and for sports promotion. Some other examples that we've seen has been for Arc'teryx's spring and summer 2024 campaign. They used NVIDIA's Instant NGP to create a lot of renderings and other interactive examples of Arc'teryx's products. And one of my other favorite examples is definitely very timely. For the Lunar New Year a couple of years ago, they used Luma again for their their storytelling to be able to translate this into a actual story. And it's just an amazing, there's a couple funny stories about this shoot as well, which this was shot with something that you would not imagine. As you take a look at the other services that are provided, there's a ton of use cases that are being offered right now for virtual production. One of which is Shutterstock offers something very similar to this, as well as Sony PCL out of Japan, whereby they have a proprietary NERF system where you can see the comparison between photogrammetry to NERFs and how they're actually offering this as a service. And what this allows for is you're able to film in locations that may otherwise be inaccessible. And that could be because of foot traffic or just general licensing costs or permitting costs, but you're still able to bring this location to the screen, and you're able to get this realism and efficiency that you would get from a virtual production set. And as you can see here, as you compare from like photogrammetry, if you really start to look at some of the details in here, some of the reflective objects, you really you completely miss the glass, where it's not even known that there was any glass there. But as you can see here in the NERF reconstruction, it's just completely evident what the actual place looked like. And if you take a look here, there have been also a lot of music videos of high-profile artists who have utilized some form of radiance fields. Zayn Malik has a music video that uses quite a few radiance fields in it, which I think racked up something like 10 million views in the first 24 hours that it was released. And if you're looking for a very cool example of this, the RL Grimes Pour Your Heart Out is actually comprised of over 700 individual NERFs. Every single shot in that music video is a NERF, and it's very cool because it starts to show what happens from a directing standpoint as to what happens when you film in post and you actually set the action that you want, and then you can decide how you want to have that be shown off in the future. So I'm just going to skip through. Okay, so if we take a look as what the future of radiance fields might look like, and there is nothing to indicate that there will be a continual exponential improvement of radiance fields that continue to emerge. That includes, items like NERFs. NERFs will continue to get tremendously more powerful, as will Gaussians, as will there will be more novel representations that continue to emerge as well. There's also been a rapid increase in open source tools like NERF Studio as well, who we're about to hear from Professor Anju Kanazawa, which I'm very excited to attend, as well as Play Canvas's Super Splat gets more and more built out. And you really get a lot of sense of industry collaboration here. There was just a meeting last week from some of the preeminent tech companies at the Metaverse Standard Forums, where we really got a sense of excited collaborations for this space. And the amount of research attention that's continued to get driven through this is just generally astounding, whereby we're seeing 5+ papers a day coming out for this technology, and it's just continuing to get more and more attention. And like I said, there's going to be more representations that are yet to come, and we're really not at a point yet where we can say definitively this is going to be the definitive future. But the larger umbrella of radiance fields, I think, is where we should really be taking a look at the attention. Some other potential technical advancements that I think we'll see is we're going to see a lot faster reconstruction time. Right now, the speed of training has continued to fall, but I do think that in the somewhat short to medium term future, we will begin to see near instant reconstructions from when you start the training to when you finish it, where I think in a period where we're very fortunate to be able to watch the training happen because it's a very beautiful process. But in the future, I do think that this will be something that happens instantaneously. And alongside that too, we're going to see a more stronger fidelity too. There have been certain papers like VR Nerf from Meta, which start to push what is the actual fidelity ceiling that's possible. And while you need a very intensive computer to do so, we've already seen potential IMAX level reconstructions of Radiance fields that are going to be supported. So as compute also scales, we're going to see more and more stronger representations come out too, as well as also being able to compress these files to become even smaller than they already are. When Gaussian splatting first came out, it was not uncommon to see file sizes on the scope of gigabytes. And now we are seeing them get it down to around, like, depending on the number of splats and the size of the scene, you're able to compress them down to 20 megabytes, and that will continue to also get exponentially stronger. And on the side of Nerf's already sub-megabyte as well too. There's a lot of compression work that's already been done there. We're also going to see more tooling emerge too. One of the ones I'm really excited about is Play Canvas's Super Splat. I think that you're going to see some really amazing things come out of Super Splat in the coming weeks and months. And the final thing is just general reduced VRAM requirements. We're going to get more accessible reconstruction pipelines, whether that expands on mobile or across other GPU architectures and devices. We're going to see more and more performant ways to train these Radiance fields. And as more work gets done in the realm of world foundation models as well as generative AI, we're really going to be able to benefit from that boom whereby we have this data that's able to be reconstructed and interacted with in a lifelike 3D capacity, which is something I'm very excited about. And one other thing of note too is that I'm very interested to see how how neural rendering and some of the newer offerings from NVIDIA continue to grow in capabilities and adoption. And I would also pay very close attention to the world of neural rendering and how it impacts Radiance fields in the future. And the final point is that there's such a wide breadth of industries that are beginning to experiment and adopt this technology, whereby I really do feel that we are going to see a use case for this technology for anyone that's currently using 2D in some capacity. There is significantly more data and information and ways to actually step imaging into a hyperreal and lifelike 3D future than we've ever had the ability to do so in the past. And I think that this is something that we will see, or is already beginning to happen. But as more companies and more industries begin to realize what they can do with this technology, this, I think, will start to really get accelerated. With this all in mind, there is obviously a lot of information, and in a lot of ways, things are moving too fast to keep up with. Even working on it full time, the pace of research, adoption, and experimentation is going too fast. And so I have been cataloging the progression of Radiance field-based representation so that you can stay up to date as well. So if you'd like to follow along with the world of Radiance fields, definitely consider going to radiancefields.com, where I post industry stories, research breakthroughs, and in the future, you'll start to see more case studies and more functionalities be brought to the website as well. For businesses that are looking to experiment with, learn more about, and adopt Radiance field technologies, I also offer consulting services as well as a job board where we can reach targeted engineers, of which there are a growing number. So thank you so much for letting me speak today, and I appreciate all of your time.